From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Ijoma Unyato.
Hello and welcome. 471 mysterious deaths in Yobe State within 5 weeks. The state government says they are not related to coronavirus. Stop the deportation of Almajirai. House of Representatives tells federal government it's an infringement on their rights as Nigerians. Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 says deportation of Almajirai is a breach of guidelines on interstate travel. And Russia confirms 232,000 cases of coronavirus, the second highest toll in the world after the US. Plus, we'll have business, sports, news from Abuja, the FCT, and later news from our studios in London.
On business news, House of Representatives begins probe of the power sector as it seeks to review laws and regulations guiding the industry's reform.
On sports news tonight, World Football Governing Body FIFA postpones Under-20 Women's World Cup and the Under-17 Women's World Cup after a thorough assessment of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The Central Bank of Nigeria throws a challenge to Nigerian scientists, says it will give vaccine research grants to budding scientists in the fight against COVID-19.
The Yobe State government in the northeast has been reacting to the reports of mysterious deaths across 5 local government councils which went viral, insisting they are not connected to coronavirus. The Commissioner of Health and Vice Chairman of the COVID-19 Task Force in the state, Dr. Lawan Ghana, who briefed journalists on the verbal autopsy's preliminary findings, confirmed 471 deaths recorded within the last 5 weeks. He says 57% of the victims had underlying chronic illnesses, while chances of importation of COVID-19 were minimal, as only 4% had travel history.
This action is usually associated with farming season, but not this time. It's a mass burial in Yobe State. A situation that has become something of a ritual across 5 local government areas. In the last 5 weeks, 471 people have been buried. There is certainly a need to be concerned over the number of fatalities, but that's just on the one hand. The second is the mystery behind the cause of deaths, which is baffling everyone in the state. A similar situation occurred in Kano State and then in Jigawa and Gombe states, with authorities ruling out COVID-19. Could this be the case in Yobe? Here, 8 demographics is coming to play as the Commissioner for Health breaks down the figures.
57% of those deaths had underlying chronic illness. More than 57% were aged between 50 years and above, and then 58.5% were male. The trend actually showed an increase in mortality. However, the geospatial maps showed no clustering of mortalities. 96% of those that died had no travel history outside the state, and approximately 90% of the cases did not have symptoms that were consistent with COVID-19.
The ability to manage the crisis is a skill the Yobe State government may need to harness, coupled with urgent medical support to verify the cause of deaths as it battles to contain the spread of COVID-19.
And over at the National Assembly, the House of Representatives is asking the executive to intervene and immediately halt the repatriation of the Almajirai to their states of origin. The resolution of the House follows a motion by Honorable Aisha Tuduku, who describes the repatriation of Almajirai as a violation of the fundamental right of a Nigerian to reside in any part of the country. Other COVID-19 related motions were also considered by the lawmakers. Our correspondent Terry Ikumi reports.
Members of the House of Representatives applaud nurses in commemoration of the International Nurses' Day.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues.
The rest of the session is filled with motions relating to the COVID-19 pandemic. One lawmaker calls for intervention of the House in the controversy generated from the index case in Yobe State.
Mandate the National Center for Disease Control through the Federal Ministry of Health to critically evaluate her as a matter of urgency, and if proven otherwise, should be allowed to go home.
And another calls on the House to protect Nigerian workers from compulsory leave and massive job losses due to COVID-19.
If the needful is not done as quickly as possible to bolster key sectors through federal government economic packages, unimaginable mass job losses loom in Nigeria, and this could lead to a great distortion in the economic growth plan of the nation.
Following reports of manhandling and deaths of Nigerians by security operatives in the course of enforcing the COVID-19 lockdown, an investigative motion to that effect is adopted.
The response of the police authorities has neither been replicated by the other security agencies whose personnel was implicated in the killings, nor has been severe enough to serve as deterrents in an environment of gross human rights abuses by security operatives.
Another motion questioning the use of foreign airlines to airlift Nigerians from other countries is also considered and adopted.
When there are competent local airlines fit to render the same services instead of foreign airlines, which threatens the economic well-being of the country and likely contributes to retrenchment of workers by the local airlines.
The attention of lawmakers is also drawn to the decision of the northern governors to repatriate the Almajirai to their state of origin.
Disturbed that in some cases these children, after traveling for so many hours under harsh weather, were rejected and turned back by their states of origin, or at best they were kept in isolation under dehumanizing and demeaning conditions. Urge the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 to enforce the interstate travel ban order and direct the governors concerned to immediately halt the evacuation of the Almajirai.
The House also resolves to urge the northern governors to ensure that the Almajirai are captured in the universal basic and technical education system. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 says the recent repatriation of Almajirai across the country is ill-timed as it contravenes the ban on interstate travel. At the daily news conference of the task force in Abuja, the chairman notes that instead of curtailing the pandemic, such repatriation will increase the number of infections. Meanwhile, the PTF is also asking indigenous researchers to come up with a cure and be ready to subject their findings to all validation processes.
Members of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, led by the chairman, who is also the secretary to the government of the Federation, give update on the national response to the spread of the virus in the country.
I welcome you.
Again, the PTF chairman decries the huge violations of the various advisories it issued before the relaxation of the lockdown, including the repatriations of Almajirai across the states and the misuse of face masks.
The Presidential Task Force has stated several times that this is not the time. One, we have a protocol that says that interstate movement is banned. And this came as a result of input from the state governors. You must have seen the letter they wrote us. So the subnationals that even requested for that should not be seen as the ones that are also disregarding what they requested for. Because if you say interstate travels are banned, except for essential services, I don't think the movement of Almajiris at this time is an essential service. The unhealthy practice of picking up disposed masks for whatever purpose
is harmful to both the individual picking it and whoever procures it later.
The PTF chairman also challenges indigenous researchers to come up with a cure and willingly subject their findings to validation processes.
Since the recording of the index case, Nigerians have clamored for research into homegrown solution to COVID-19. The Presidential Task Force, as part of its mandate, has continued to promote research and wishes to repeat its appeal to all our researchers to go through the validation process.
I called her.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Health gives update on the health status of the infected health workers.
No new infections of health workers has been reported in the line of duty in recent times due to all the training and retraining that has gone on. And those who have recovered from their infection are awaiting certification to resume work.
He also speaks on the controversial Benue State index case.
When NCDC got there, she told them that she wanted the test to be taken by World Health Organization. And then that the test should not be done in Nigeria, they should send it to UK to go and do the test. So that seemed to be a very difficult order. So it's becoming a very odd drama. It was reported to me, so I called her again and I said, why have you changed the conditions? You said you wanted your results, you have your results. And she wrote a text to me saying I should consult her lawyer. She has taken a lawyer. So that was just yesterday, I think. So we're going to continue with the lawyer business.
The Presidential Task Force was set up by the federal government to coordinate a national response for COVID-19. But it does appear, however, that the task force need more collaboration with the states to effectively deliver on its mandate.
Now, before the task force briefing today, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, led the team to the commissioning of the This Day Dome Treatment and Isolation Center in Abuja. At the event, the Central Bank Governor, Godwin Emefiele, announced that the Apex Bank is developing a framework for grants and long-term facilities for researchers and science institutions to develop vaccines to curb the COVID-19 pandemic.
Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, leads other top government officials to launch the This Day Treatment and Isolation Center.
Commissioned this facility for the mankind to the glory of God.
The center has a 300-bed space facility with an intensive care unit, X-ray machines and ventilators to cater to the needs of COVID-19 patients. The SGF is particularly happy that the private sector-driven initiative is a success.
Today, we are witnessing the realization of the synergy with the commissioning of this facility, which is designed to accommodate 300 beds and is scalable to 500. The speed and commitment demonstrated by the partners that developed this infrastructure is a call to other private sector entities to also get involved in the development of public interest facilities.
The COVID-19 pandemic has left many nations seeking for ways to reduce the scourge of the virus, especially through the production of vaccines, and Nigeria is not left out. The central bank is promising loans for researchers to come up with such vaccines.
In order to encourage greater research and development in Nigeria of drugs and vaccines that would help prevent the spread of this virus, the Central Bank of Nigeria is developing a framework under which grants and long-term facilities will be provided to researchers, science institutions, and biotechnology firms to develop Nigerians' homegrown vaccines.
The This Day Dome Treatment and Isolation Center is a collaboration of a private sector coalition involving the chairman of This Day newspapers, Mr. Unduka Obagbina, Sahara Group, CACOVID, NNPC, and its consortium.
Against the backdrop of the repatriation of Almajirai children to their states of origin, Kano state government has reaffirmed its commitment to the full implementation of its policy on the integration of the system as a component of free and compulsory education. The government says it's prepared to accept Almajirai of Kano state origin from any state of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory and treat them according to normal protocol of isolation, other medical checkups and upkeep. The State Commissioner for Information, Mallam Muhammad Garba, who explained this in a statement, also said that the government has perfected all plans to enroll the Almajirai in boarding schools with fully equipped dormitories where they will be catered for. In part two, after the break, Senate asked Inspector General of Police service chiefs to enforce ban on interstate travel. It's coming up in a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. 471 mysterious deaths in Yobe State within 5 weeks. The state government says they are not related to coronavirus. Stop the deportation of Almajirai. House of Representatives tells federal government it's an infringement on their rights as Nigerians. Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 says deportation of Almajirai is a breach of guidelines on interstate travel. And Russia confirms 232,000 cases of coronavirus, the second highest toll in the world after the US. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android, Fire and Roku as well. In Jigawa State, 7 COVID-19 patients have been discharged from the state isolation center where they've recovered after receiving treatment. Governor Badaru Abubakar, who confirmed this to journalists in Dutse, the state capital, said the number of confirmed cases in the state is 118, with 2 fatalities, while 53% of the total cases are Almajirai repatriated from Kano. Meanwhile, the governor projects that the best possible case scenario may see the numbers reach 800, while the worst can be up to 20,000 in the state.
You will agree with me that COVID-19 infection is now with us in Jigawa State, as the disease has spread to 8 local governments out of the 27 local government areas of the state. The state has total number of 118 confirmed cases, with 2 facilities so far accommodating them. So far, 7 patients have been cured and discharged from the isolation facilities. Out of the current 118 patients, 63 are Almajiris deported from Kano, representing 53% of the total patient load in the state.
Well, the governor was a guest on our special program COVID-19 Update about an hour ago, where he said that the repatriation of Almajirai was a good decision, but it should have waited until after the pandemic. 50 persons have been quarantined at the NYSC camp in Kaduna State, that's in the capital, for violating the ban of interstate travel. This has been confirmed by the Kaduna State Standing Committee on COVID-19, explaining that the action is in compliance with the quarantine orders of the state. According to a statement by the Special Advisor on Media and Communication to the Governor, The culprits will be isolated there for 14 days to ensure that they are COVID-19 free. The statement warns that the Kaduna State government will no longer offer the option of quarantine for persons travelling illegally. 15 patients have so far been discharged and 4 fatalities recorded out of the 92 active cases in the state. And over in the southwest, the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has asked the Judiciary to partner with the executive in its efforts to stop the spread of the coronavirus. At the swearing-in ceremony of 8 new judges of the High Court of Lagos today, Governor Sanwo-Olu stressed the need for the judges, through their actions and words, to demonstrate that everyone must act responsibly. The governor again warned that his government may be forced to approve a lockdown if there's no show of responsibility on the part of citizens. The ceremony was held at the Government House Alausa with clear regard for social distancing guidelines.
But the last C, which is communication, is to ensure that we'll continue to communicate transparently and effectively to our citizens. I think that is very, very important. And that is where we believe that you also need it. Because it's only in communication that all of us will take responsibility. All of us will understand and know that we all have a role to play. And that's why your government, our government, will continue to let our people know where we are at every stage down the road. And I want to assure you that for us as a government, we'll do nothing, we'll do everything to ensure that we defeat this pandemic and that will bring life and normalcy to our people. We also need the judiciary to stay with us, to stand with us, to ensure that we're working together on a collaborative effort and we're communicating. And I have no doubts, has been shown this morning with the leadership of my Lord Honorable Justice Aluba, that the Lagos State Judiciary is an arm of government that we can continue to rely on, we can continue to see as a willing partner, and we can continue to ensure that we're engaging ourselves going forward.
And one of the returnees evacuated by the federal government from the United Arab Emirates has died from COVID-19 related complications. The State Commissioner for Health, Professor Akin Abayomi, confirmed this in a tweet today. He says the victim had severe underlying health conditions, and the Commissioner also appealed to Lagos residents to be cautious despite the easing of the lockdown. Let's cross over to Abuja now. Here's Ibrahim Adra. Ibrahim.
Hi, German. Hello, everyone. Sokoto State Government has announced it has discharged 41 COVID-19 patients from its Amanawa Isolation Center after testing negative twice. The State Commissioner for Health and Chairman Task Force on COVID-19, Mohammed Ali Name, announced this at a press briefing in Sokoto. He says 19 persons had earlier been discharged from the isolation center, and today another set of 22 patients that tested negative twice are also discharged. Mr. Ename also advised residents in the state not to stigmatize the discharged patients, saying coronavirus is not a death sentence.
We have been able this morning to discharge 22. We discharged 22 patients out of our facilities, both in Amana and Specialist Hospital. So if you add the 22 figure plus 19, it will give you 41 discharges as of this moment that I'm speaking to you.
Elsewhere, the Senate is asking the Inspector General of Police and heads of all security agencies involved in enforcing the ban on interstate travel to investigate the alleged complicity of their officers in breaching the ban on non-essential interstate travels. This follows a motion presented by former Deputy Senate President Senator Eke Ekweremadu on the need to enforce the presidential order. While adopting the motion, the lawmakers say the trend could complicate the serious health challenge facing the country and ultimately frustrate the efforts of the federal government.
Very worried about the report of alleged complicity in the same breaches by those who are supposed to enforce compliance with the directives of the President Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Accordingly, I urge this Senate to condemn in strong terms the barefaced breach of the presidential order on interstate movements. 2, enjoin Nigerians to please strictly comply with these orders for their own safety and to quicken the nation's victory over COVID-19 pandemics. 3, direct the Inspector General of Police, Commander General of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, and heads of all security agencies charged with enforcing the ban on interstate travel to investigate the alleged complicity of the officers in the breach of the curfew and ban on non-essential interstate travels, and bring to book anyone found wanting. And finally, to direct the Inspector General of Police and the Commandant General of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps to fully enforce presidential orders on curfew and ban on non-essential interstate travel, as well as ensure that their various commands cooperate with respective state authorities in enforcing the presidential orders and other protocols aimed at rolling back the COVID-19 pandemic.
The porous boundary routes across Plateau State is a source of concern to the government in spite of the border closure directives to curtail community spread of the coronavirus in the state. Worried by this development, Plateau State Governor Simon Lalong embarked on a tour of major entry routes where he disapproved of the disregard for the border closure and cautioned security personnel not to compromise on the directives by ensuring that violators are arrested and prosecuted accordingly.
What we are discovering now is that in spite of all we are doing, the borders, people are still sneaking through the borders. And you know, almost all the index cases that we have in Plateau State are imported. So we must go back and start checking the border. And that was why I took the opportunity myself to go around and see how to further tighten our border. So that let us not think that, yes, because in some states we have higher numbers, here we have lesser numbers, we will continue to relax. No, this virus is not about relaxing. In one day, you know that in one day we got 10 people in Plateau, 10. So we don't want to have more than that. And that's why we're very serious and also telling people that it is a very serious business to cope, to flatten COVID-19.
And the Coalition Against COVID-19, COVID, in collaboration with the Aliko Dangote Foundation, has handed over a 66-bed capacity isolation center to the Kano state government at the state's urology center. The facility, established in 2008, was earlier converted to isolation center to cater for the growing number of active cases of coronavirus in Kano.
As part of its corporate social responsibility towards stemming the spread of the deadly coronavirus, Dangote Foundation, in partnership with Coalition Against COVID-19, has furnished this facility with modern healthcare equipment. While commissioning the center, Governor Abdullahi Ganduje expresses hope that the pandemic will surely come to an end, but people must stay at home and observe health regulations.
This isolation center will no doubt assist in solving our problems in trying to find out how to accommodate those who prove positive. We don't have enough words to thank Aliko Dangote because he's attacking this problem from so many angles.
Meanwhile, the Coalition Against COVID-19, which consists of 107 donors, confirmed that so far, about 25 billion naira has been spent in fighting the pandemic across the country.
Aliko Dangote Foundation and COVID will continue to partner and support you in this fight, not only to contain, but to defeat and conquer the coronavirus in the state.
With over 600 confirmed positive cases at the moment, Kano is receiving the highest donation in northern Nigeria, aimed at limiting the spread of the virus.
Your Excellency, it is at this
When the news at 10 returns, we have more reports on COVID-19. Plus, House of Representatives begin probe of power sector to renew industry rules of engagement. That's on Business News. Join us again.
Welcome back to the news at 10. A cross-section of residents in Lekki and Ajah area of Lagos are divided on whether the gradual easing of the lockdown was thought through. While some of them agreed that the easing of the lockdown was a step in the right direction, others say the lockdown should not have been lifted at all. Our correspondent Gimba Umar reports.
From Ikoyi to Victoria Island and then to Lekki, normalcy pervades. The gradual easing of the lockdown by the government abused and misplaced. Face masks have become common owing to the coronavirus, a silent but vicious killer. Many in denial of the dangers as the virus tears through the fabric of society. For bikes, it's a total disregard for social distancing, while the buses are filled up, a cocoon where many people could fall prey to the pandemic. They, however, insist braving the odds is not a choice.
If you say you should lock it, what is the government giving us so that we can use to survive?
At 60 and grey, a retiree says that returning to a lockdown smacks of cruelty, one that cannot stand. Hunger, he says, will kill ruthlessly. His comments points to bad roads, which he says is one of many challenges beyond the pandemic.
Local governments who supposed to build this road, there are no local government. Everybody is staying hungry. How can you keep somebody that stabbed the person? Can it happen?
His concerns are shared by many. A mother of two totally condemns another lockdown, which for now seems likely. She says she can't have it.
I didn't support it. The reason why is that there is no much money and you don't have food store, you have to go out. If you don't have money, you can't stay at home.
Driving past, a man stops to stock up on food in fear that the worst of the coronavirus still whispers for those who have ears.
If Nigeria really know what is good for them, they should lock down again.
It's a different tale for another who feels another lockdown will fuel frustration.
It's definitely wrong. He's not helping the citizens. Rather, he's pushing them forward to do what they are not supposed to do.
The consensus cuts at the center on whether an easing of the lockdown was necessary. Gimba Umar, Channels Television News.
Unconfirmed reports say a former Minister of External Affairs, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, may be named the next Chief of Staff to President Muhammadu Buhari tomorrow. Although this has not been confirmed by the presidency, there has been no official denial of the story either. Professor Gambari served as the Minister for External Affairs between 1984 and 1985. The 75-year-old diplomat was also the chairman of the United Nations Special Committee Against Apartheid from 1990 to 1994 and later served as Under-Secretary General and head of the United Nations Department of Political Affairs between 2005 and 2007. If confirmed, he brings a wealth of experience in administration and diplomacy, having held several leadership positions at national and international levels. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has arrested 2 Chinese nationals for offering 50 million naira bribe to its Sokoto zonal head, Mr. Abdullahi Lawal, to compromise an investigation of an abandoned road project by a Chinese firm. The suspects, named as Meng Wei Kun and Xu Kui, who are top officials of China's Zhonggao Nigeria Limited, were arrested yesterday by EFCC operatives during a sting operation in the Sokoto state capital. The EFCC spokesman, Dele Oyewale, says the bribe was offered in cash in order to interfere with the probe of the Chinese construction company's handling of the contracts awarded by the Zamfara state government between 2012 to 2019. when the two men offered Mr. Lawal the sum of 50 million naira at their office as a first installment of 100 million naira bribe, they were promptly arrested with the cash as evidence. Let's take a look at some business news now. Here's Kayode Okikiolu.
Thank you, Gemma, and you're welcome to Business News. We begin at the National Assembly, where the House of Representatives has directed its committees on power and privatization to review and investigate extant laws, regulations, policies, and contractual arrangement within the country's power sector and submit the report within 4 weeks. The House made these decisions at today's plenary following the adoption of a motion tagged "Needs to Review and Investigate the Nigerian Power Sector," which was sponsored by Ifeanyi Moma, representing APGA and Ambassadorial State.
As an indication of failure to achieve the gains of the power sector reforms in Nigeria, the House further notes that there is an urgent and holistic need to review the power sector reforms, concerns that, in the light of unstable gas and power supply and due to critical requirement of power as a major catalyst for the industrialization of Nigeria, job creation, fiscal revenue generation, and economic diversification, there is a need to identify the root causes for the continued moribund nature of the national electricity supply industry and recommend a roadmap for the revitalization of the sector to the House for further legislative action. Based on this foregoing, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, the House hereby resolves to 1. That the Committee on Power and Privatization to review the extant laws, regulations, policies, and contractual agreements guiding the power sector reforms, to review and investigate the activities of the Nigerian electricity supply industry, and also to direct the committee to submit its report to the House within 4 weeks.
And over to the oil sector, where the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation says it recorded 211.62 billion naira in sales of white products in February from its downstream subsidiary, the Petroleum Products Marketing Company. In a statement released today, the NNPC spokesperson, Mr. Kano explains that the amount contained in its monthly financial and operations report for the month was significantly higher by 111% compared to the previous month's record, which stood at 151.79 billion naira. The report shows that about 1.7 billion litres of white products were sold and distributed by PPMC in the month of February, and that's compared with about 1.2 billion litres sold in January. After starting off the week with a 49 billion naira drop, the stock market extended its loss wider by 133 billion naira as total volume of trades decreased by 24.9% at the close of Tuesday's trading session. Temple Ashaju tells us more.
Thank you for joining us on the Stock Market Report. Profits taken on equities continued today as investors shaved off gains across the major sectors, including the medium and large cap stocks, the impact of which hit the key benchmark indices by 1.06% and consequently expanded the year-to-date losses to 11.7%. Now, the axe fell on Dangote Cement to trim the industrial goods stocks by 1.84% ahead of the insurance segment and the banking stocks. Keverton fell the most in value by 10%, while Naamet, a pharmaceutical company, on the other hand, appreciated the most by the same margin. FBN Holdings maintained its grip on the top trade spot, adding the total volume of transactions, which came in lower at 155 million units and estimated at 1.6 billion naira in 4,005 deals. And that's your stock market report. I'm Temple Ashaju.
Thank you, Temple. On the global scene, U.S. stock market ended Tuesday's trading session negative across board, giving back some of their recently strong gains as investors evaluated the latest attempts to reopen the economy. Well, let's find out how other major global markets closed today. Well, that's business news for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Kayode Okikelu. The news at 10 continues with Ijeoma.
Thanks a lot, Coyote. Still ahead on the news at 10, Russia confirms 232,000 cases of coronavirus, the second highest toll in the world after the US. We'll have this and more from our London studios and around the world in 5. Do stay with us. Welcome back. The president is seeking the Senate's approval of 42 nominees as the country's ambassadors. President Buhari's request to the upper house was read by the president of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, during plenary. The request for confirmation of the ambassadorial nominees was contained in a letter dated May the 6th, 2020. President Buhari's letter also requested 2 other appointments into the board of the Law Reform Commission and the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation. Russia is now only behind the United States in the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases worldwide, with a total of 232,243. Officials say the high number of cases reflect the huge testing campaign, with some 5.8 million tests carried out so far. Here's Simon Pusey with Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel's newsroom here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The World Health Organization has said that extreme vigilance is needed as countries begin to exit from lockdown amid global concerns of a second wave of COVID-19 infections. South Korea has reported 101 new cases of coronavirus linked to a nightclub district in its capital, Seoul. Germany and China have also identified new outbreaks. The World Health Organization Director General said that a slow and steady lifting of lockdowns is key.
Over the weekend, we saw signs of the challenges that may lie ahead. In the Republic of Korea, bars and clubs were shut as a confirmed case led to many contacts being traced. In Wuhan, China, the first cluster of cases since their lockdown was lifted was identified. Germany has also reported an increase in cases since an easing of restrictions. Fortunately, all 3 countries have systems in place to detect and respond to a resurgence in cases.
Russia has now the second highest number of confirmed infections after the US in the world. The news comes after a fire broke out in a St. Petersburg hospital, killing 5 coronavirus patients in an intensive care unit. The blaze started after a ventilator treating patients with COVID-19 burst into flames. The fire was quickly put out and 150 people were evacuated from the hospital. Due to ventilator shortages in Russia, production has increased rapidly, but many machines date back to the 1990s. 13 people, including 2 babies, have been killed in an attack when gunmen stormed a hospital in the Afghan capital of Kabul. Locals heard 2 blasts and then gunfire. The attackers allegedly wore police uniforms and entered the hospital throwing grenades and shooting. There has been no immediate claim of responsibility, but the Taliban have said they were not involved. United Nations agencies have estimated that more than 500,000 people in sub-Saharan Africa could die from AIDS amid the COVID-19 pandemic unless governments move to address the issue. A 6-month disruption of antiretroviral therapy could set the clock back on AIDS-related deaths to 2008, where there were more than 950,000 deaths on the continent. That's according to the World Health Organization and the UNAIDS organization. The Angolan billionaire Isabel dos Santos has called for her assets in Angola and Portugal to be unfrozen because she says there is evidence the state and courts have colluded against her using fabricated evidence. In January, prosecutors accused Isabel, the daughter of the former Angolan president and known to be Africa's richest woman, of mismanaging and embezzling $1 billion from the state oil firm. Her assets in Angola and Portugal were then subsequently seized. Ms. dos Santos, who denies all of the allegations, says one of the documents used in court was fake and was in fact a forged passport in her name. In Mexico, residents in a community close to Mexico City have destroyed a police car in protest against their local government's sanitization efforts. Despite a growing number of new infections, President Obrador has said that he wants to restart the economy. 35,000 COVID-19 infections and over 3,500 deaths have been reported, although these figures are likely to be far lower than the real numbers due to a lack of testing. And finally, a group of artists that includes Billy Joel, Sting and Mariah Carey have raised $115 million for coronavirus relief.
Just a castaway.
The Rise Up New York initiative raised money for Robin Hood, a charitable organisation that works to alleviate poverty in the city. The state of New York has accounted for more than 1/3 of the nearly 80,000 American lives lost due to COVID-19.
We're going to get through this, but we need to make sure we take care of all our neighbours, including our children. Nearly 400,000 school kids are without access to the resources they need to continue their education, and we can help them.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thanks a lot, Simon. Let's take a look at sports now. Here's Olumide Macaulay.
Thank you, Jama. Hello and welcome to Sports News. FIFA has announced that the Under-17 Women's World Cup, due to be held in India in November, has been postponed for 3 months, adding to a growing list of sporting events affected by the pandemic. The World Football Governing Body said the tournament, to be played in 5 cities across the country, will now hold from February the 17th to March the 7th, 2021. The Flamingos of Nigeria are due to face Ghana in the final qualifying round for the African zone, which has been put on hold. FIFA also unveiled new dates for this year's Under-20 Women's World Cup in Costa Rica and Panama. It will now be played from January the 20th to February the 6th, 2021. The Cameroonian Football Federation has cancelled the 2019-2020 league season owing to the coronavirus pandemic. According to the association, the Professional Men's League and the Professional Women's League have all been cancelled. Fecafoot said as a result, Bamenda PWD has been declared champions of the league and will represent the country in the African Champions League, while second place Cotton Sport Garau will feature the Confederation Cup. Avion Academy, Tenerife Calara, and Yaoundé Dragons have been relegated to the second division. The Austrian Bundesliga has been given the green light to restart by the government following the coronavirus stoppage, with all matches to be played without spectators. The top flight teams that returned to training from April the 20th, with players divided into small groups, but there was an impasse after the government said that if a player tested positive, the entire squad would have to be quarantined for 14 days. However, after negotiations with the government, it was agreed that only the infected players should be isolated, and the rest of the squad could continue training provided they return negative results. The Austrian Bundesliga said that its clubs will meet tomorrow to discuss a start date and fixture list for the rest of the season. More football. Wolverhampton Wanderers have revealed that more than 10 members of their backroom staff were tested for COVID-19 as the Premier League began its testing procedure in advance of a potential resumption of matches. Wolverhampton said the nose and mouth swabs were performed by Premier League-appointed medics at a drive-through station in the club's training ground in Compton. The club said they were aware their midfielder Morgan Gibbs breaking lockdown rules by attending a house party in London and were dealing with it internally. Cagliari have announced that all first-team players have tested negative for coronavirus. The club confirmed that tests were carried out in the Semini Sports Centre by the health authorities. Cagliari also said the players were agreed to waive their salaries for the month of April. Serie A has given the go-ahead to resume group training on May the 18th, but under strict measures. That's it on Sports News. Back to you, Jama, for the close of the news at 10.
Thanks a lot, Olumide. And the main news again. The Yobe State government today confirmed 471 mysterious deaths in the state in 5 weeks. The state government, however, maintained that the deaths are not related to coronavirus. Also today, the House of Representatives told the federal government that the deportation of Almajirai is an infringement on their rights as Nigerians. And Russia today confirmed 232,000 cases of coronavirus, the second highest toll in the world after the US. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thanks so much for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Onyato. You stay safe and good night.